Jagadish. Oh, Jagadish. Jai Om Vishnu Bad Purnam Suparija Jukacharya Shloka Sri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavin Ki Jai Nam Acharya Sridhar Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Jamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Ramesh, you just muted. Hopefully it wasn't my fault as the host.
My fault. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Welcome everybody to Srimad Bhagavatam reading. His Holiness Jayādvaita Swami. It is Monday, January 12th, 2026. We are beginning with 425, Canto 4, Chapter 25, Text 1. Is that right? Is that where we left off?
Yes.
Ramesh, do you want to begin?
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Chapter 25, the descriptions of the characteristics of King Puranjana. Maitreya Uvacha. Iti Sandisha Bhagavan Arhishadayar Abhipujitaha Pashyatam Rajaputranam Tatraivantar Dadhe Haraha. The great sage Maitreya continued speaking to Vidura. My dear Vidura, in this way, Lord Shiva instructed the sons of King Barhishat. The sons of the king also worshipped Lord Shiva with great devotion and respect. Finally, Lord Shiva became invisible to the princes. Purport: this chapter contains a great lesson concerning the monarchical kingdom in the days of yore. When King Barhishat was considering retiring from the royal duties, he sent his sons to perform austerities in order to become perfect kings for the welfare of the citizens. At the same time, King Barhishat was being instructed by the great sage Narada about the material world and the living entity who wants to enjoy it. It is therefore very clear how the kings and princes were trained to take charge of a kingdom. Welfare activities for the benefit of the citizens were aimed at understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The human form of life is especially meant for understanding God, our relationship with Him, and our activities in His service. Because the kings took charge of the spiritual education of the citizens, both the king and the citizens were happy in Krishna consciousness. In this regard, we should remember that the monarchical hierarchy of Prachini Parishat comes from Maharaj Dhruva, a great devotee of the Lord, and the most celebrated disciple of Narad Muni. King Prachini Parishat was then too much engaged in fruitive activities due to performing different types of yajnas. One can actually be promoted to higher planetary systems or to the heavenly kingdoms by performing various yajnas. But there's no question of liberation or going back home, back to Godhead. When this great sage Narada saw that a descendant of Maharaj Dhruva was being misled by fruitive activities, Narada took compassion upon him and personally came to instruct him about the ultimate benediction of life, Bhakti Yoga. How Narad Muni indirectly introduced the Bhakti Yoga system to King Parichat is very interestingly described in this 25th chapter. Om Jnanatmidandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Vipapadamaisam Tadati Shapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jatapata Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shadrajatam Shahadana Gaganatan Titam Stam Savivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Vijana Sihitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lolita Sri Vishakan Vitamstra He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Vishakanu Sute Devi Vanamami Hori Priye Vancha Kotitabhyascha Kripa Sindho Pyevacha Patita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jayādvaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Maitreya Vacha, Iti Sandisha Bhagavan Parishadhar Abhipujitaha Pashyatan Rajaputrana Tatraivantar Tatevara. The Prabhupada focuses on this point of how responsibly the monarchy was handled. On the one side, the Jaitas were to be trained and qualified to rule the kingdom. And on the other side, when King Barhishat became excessively involved in fruitive activities, Narad Muni came to instruct him. So the monarchs were given so much importance, seeing to it that they were on track, that they were qualified, that they led the citizens properly in Krishna consciousness. It's interesting. Welfare activities for the benefit of the citizens were aimed at understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I remember I was in one Middle Eastern kingdom, and it was mentioned in the newspaper that the ruler had said, I want my citizens to have the highest standard of living in the world. So it's not my business to criticize, and there's much good that could be said about that kingdom. But having the highest standard of living is not as important as understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the real business. Our standard of living may be higher or lower, but the real standard is Krishna consciousness. And the king took charge of the education of the citizens in Krishna consciousness, the spiritual education of the citizens. So both the king and the people were happy. We'll find as these chapters unfold that King Barhishat became too involved in sacrifices and fruitive activities, which are simply not the goal of life. And therefore, Narad Muni came to instruct him. So we're beginning this narration of King Barhishat, and we'll hear about the story of King Puranjana. This section of Srimad Bhagavatam will extend for 5 chapters. Any comments or questions here so far? Rudragit. Oh, the other thing is that after instructing the Prachetas, Narad Muni disappears. Not Narad Muni, Lord Shiva disappears. Antardadhe. This is an ability of great yogis and certainly of Lord Shiva, of Narad Muni also. The Gandharvas have this capability that they can simply disappear from view. Rudra Gitam Bhagavata Stotram Sarve Prachetasaha Chapantaste Tapaste Pur Varshanam Ayutam Jale. All the Pracheta princes simply stood in the water for 10,000 years and recited the prayers given to them by Lord Shiva. Purport. Of course, in the modern age, one may be amazed how the princes could stand in the water for 10,000 years. However, living within air or living within water is the same process. One simply has to learn how to do it. The aquatics live within water for their whole lifespan. Certain favorable conditions are created to enable them to live within water. In those days, however, people used to live for 100,000 years. Out of so many years, if one could spare 10,000 years for the sake of austerity, he would be assured of success in his future life. This was not very astonishing. Although such a feat is impossible in this age, it was quite possible in Satya Yuga. So they've heard the Rudra Gita, the song sung by Lord Shiva, and they chanted it also, Japantas. Japantas means they would have quietly chanted, not kirtan, while performing austerity. Varshanam Ayutam, for 1,000 years, Jole, within the water. And we don't know, I don't know for sure, what does it mean that they were within the water? It says that they stood in the water. Of course, the water would have been quite deep. So does it mean, and the way that Prabhupada speaks about it, he speaks about living within the water the way the fish do. So were the prachetas submerged in the water? Yogis do that. The Shobhari Muni did that, meditating underwater. Or were they standing in the water with their heads and torsos above? It's not directly stated. Then Prabhupada mentions that to spare 10,000 out of 100,000 years for austerity was not astonishing. And in previous ages, this was possible. All right. Any questions, comment? Okay. Prachina barhisham kshatta karmasva saktamanasam nardo dhyatma tattvagya kripalu prachabodhayat. Would you like to read a little bit, Rasananda?
Yes.
Or point someone.
Yeah. Okay. Sham Sindhu Prabhu, would you like to? I can. Okay. Saraswati Mashi.
Pranams to all the Vaishnavas. Text 3, are we at the purport?
No, we're at the translation.
Sorry. Translation. While the princes were undergoing severe austerities in the water, their father was performing different types of fruitive activities. At this time, the great saint Narada, master and teacher of all spiritual life, became very compassionate upon the king and decided to instruct him about spiritual life. Purport. As pointed out by Prabodhananda Ananda Saraswati Thakur, a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya, Kevalya, or merging into the Brahman effulgence, is just like going to hell. He similarly states that elevation to the upper planetary systems for the enjoyment of heavenly life is just so much phantasmagoria. This means that a devotee does not give any importance to the ultimate goal of the karmis and jnanis. The ultimate goal of the karmis is promotion to the heavenly kingdom, and the ultimate goal of the jnanis is merging into the Brahman effulgence. Of course, the jnanis are superior to the karmis as confirmed by Lord Chaitanya. Koti karmanishta madhya eka gnani sreshta. One jnani or impersonalist is better than many thousands of fruitive actors. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 19.147. Therefore, a devotee never enters upon the path of karma or elevation by fruitive activities. Narada Muni took compassion upon King Pracheni when he saw the king engaged in fruitive activity. In comparison to mundane workers, those who are trying to be elevated to the higher planetary systems by performing yajnas are undoubtedly superior. In pure devotional service, however, both karma and jnana are considered bewildering features of the illusory energy. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
The Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out that we'll read it. While Srila taught the Prachetas his song, Narad was teaching their father Gyan, Vairagya, and Bhakti through the story of Puranjana. Without completing the story of the Prachetas, Maitreya now speaks about their father. Narada was merciful, thinking, this king in the dynasty of my dear devotee Dhruva is enamored by karma. I shall save him. These karmas vasaktamanasam, the mind of King Prachini was preoccupied with fruitive activities. Asakta, his mind was attached to karmakandya activities, fruitive activities. And that's considered degradation. The human life isn't meant for karmakandya activities, and especially not the life of a descendant of such a great devotee as Dhruva Maharaj. Why should his descendant be attached to activities for material enjoyment? Yes. Better to be a Jnani and much better to be a devotee. So, Nardo Adhyatma Tattva Gya Kripalu Prachupodhayat. So, Kripalu, out of great compassion for him, Narada will speak, giving him instructions, and especially instructions about Adhyatma Tattva Gyan. Adhyatma Tattva Gyan, spiritual realization. Prabhupada speaks disparagingly about karma and gyan here and in coming purports also. Here their karma is compared to hell. Well, actually, gyan is compared to hell. That is kaivalya, or merging in the absolute truth, is considered hellish. And elevation to the heavenly planets is considered to be like Akash Pushpa, a flower in the sky. To achieve the heavenly planets is not meant for it is childish. Yam imam pushpitam vacham pravadanti avipaschita vedavadarata partana stitivam. So, therefore, Narad wants to enlighten the king. Any questions? Discussion.
Saraswati Masterji, would you like to?
Pranams and all the Vaishnavas. Guru Maharaj, in our local class, we were also reading about how Narada Muni is advising Yudhishthir Maharaj, who is very concerned upon seeing that his uncle Dhritarashtra and Gandhari Mata have left without letting anyone know, and who's going to maintain them. And here we're also seeing how Narada Muni has come to advise this king. So I'm wondering, is this all Yoga Maya? Because earlier in the verse we read that the king was fully aware about the duties of a king in terms of educating the citizens in spiritual knowledge. So he must have known that Bhakti Yoga is above all else, but yet we see that he's now been misled by fruitive activities. So is this a sort of bewilderment put on by Yoga Maya? Hare Krishna.
We can't really know whether this bewilderment is due to Yoga Maya, Mahamaya. Finally, in one sense, it looks the same. He's absorbed in fruitive activities, whether that's because of some internal desire of Krishna expressed through Yogamaya, or whether it's simply the powerful effect of the illusory energy. We don't really know. It's not discussed, at least, by Srila Prabhupada or Krishna Chakravarti Thakur in the commentary. But we're absorbed in fruitive activities, jnana karmadhyanapratam, jnana karmadi. We're at the present moment more interested in material advancement, fruitive activities, or mental speculation. And therefore we need the mercy of devotees to the standard of the, I'm sorry, I lost my thread there. We're involved in fruitive activities, and therefore we need to be brought to the standard. Is that okay?
Yes, Guru Maharaj, and they talk about the heavenly planets. So the residents of those heavenly planets, they could also be performing austerities, because we know Narada Muni goes to counsel everyone all over the universe. So can we say that the residents of the high planetary systems are engaged in bhakti yoga and performing austerities too?
They're engaged in bhakti yoga. We do hear sometimes about sacrifices performed on the heavenly planets. So there are austerities that may be performed to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But generally, we hear of the heavenly planets as being places of enjoyment rather than austerity. Those who are more interested in austerity go to Siddhaloka or other higher planets. Generally, those who are interested in fruitive activities take their birth here. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay. Shreyas Tvam Katamadrajan Karmanatmana Ihase Dukkahani Sukha Bhakti Shreyas Tanneha Cheshate. Narad Muni asked King Prachina Parhishat, "My dear king, what do you desire to achieve by performing these fruitive activities? The chief aim of life is to get rid of all miseries and enjoy happiness. But these two things cannot be realized by fruitive activity." And there'll be an extensive purport here. In this material world, well, let's take a look at let's read the purport. In this material world, there's a great illusion which covers real intelligence. A man in the mode of passion wants to work very hard to derive some benefit, but he does not know that time will never allow him to enjoy anything permanently. Compared with the work one expends, the gain is not so profitable. Even if it is profitable, it's not without its distresses. If a man is not born rich and he wants to purchase a house, cars, and other material things, he has to work hard night and day for many years in order to possess them. Thus, happiness is not attained without undergoing some distress. So we'll see a critique here from Srila Prabhupada about a supposed material enjoyment The gain, you have to put more trouble into it than it's worth. And therefore, to get happiness, you have to undergo distress. Well, what's the use of that? How intelligent is that? Actually, pure happiness cannot be had within this material world. If we wish to enjoy something, we must suffer for something else. On the whole, suffering is the nature of this material world. And whatever enjoyment we're trying to achieve is simply illusion. After all, we have to suffer the miseries of birth, old age, disease, and death. We may discover many fine medicines, but it's not possible to stop the sufferings of disease or death. On the whole, there's no happiness in this material world, but an illusioned person works very hard for so-called happiness. Indeed, this process of working hard is actually taken for happiness. This is called illusion. I'm enjoying my work. No, we don't. But for the sake of family happiness, we work very, very hard. We work very, very hard. Therefore, Narad Muni asked King Prachinibarhishat what he desired to attain by performing so many costly sacrifices. Even if one attains a heavenly planet, he cannot avoid the distresses of birth, old age, disease, and death. Someone may argue that even devotees have to undergo many distresses in executing austerities and penances connected with devotional service. Of course, for the neophytes, the routine of devotional service may be very painful, but at least they have the hope that they will ultimately be able to avoid all kinds of distresses and achieve the highest perfectional stage of happiness. For the common karmis, there's no such hope, because even if they're promoted to the higher planetary systems, they're not guaranteed freedom from the miseries of birth, old age, disease, and death. Even Lord Brahma, who is situated in the highest planetary system, Brahmaloka, has to die. Lord Brahma's birth and death may be different from an ordinary man's, but within this material world, he cannot avoid the distresses of birth, old age, disease, and death. If one is at all serious about attaining liberation from these miseries, he must take to devotional service. This is confirmed by the Lord himself in the Bhagavad Gita. Janma karma chame divyam, janma karma chame divyam, evam yo veti tattvataha, so vikalpena yogena. I'm sorry. I read the wrong verse, didn't I? Not the one that's here. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tattvataha, chakva deham punarjanma naiti mameti surjana. I'm a little flown out today. Just did 6 hours of travel. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Thus, after attaining full Krishna consciousness, the devotee does not return to this material world after death. He goes back home, back to Godhead. That is the perfect stage of happiness, unblemished by any trace of distress. Just as an editorial note here, for the interest of those who may be interested, the editors typically, when Srila Prabhupada quoted a Sanskrit verse, added the translation, which, well, we could debate whether that was a good idea or a bad or not so good idea, but that's what we did. Hayagriva Prabhu would add the English, and I followed suit. Although sometimes, and especially later, we would not add the translation if it wasn't necessary. Welcome, Hare Krishna. But it's interesting to see. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Jaya. Hare Krishna. We're just in Bhagavatam class here. But we see that actually Prabhupada himself translates the verse. And you know, so Srila Prabhupada himself gives the translation that after attaining full Krishna consciousness, the devotee does not return to this material world, but he goes back home, back to Godhead. And I'd be interested, actually, let me check one little thing about this translation, if I can. This has got me curious now. Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, 425. I'm not so confident that the word, that the translation, that the verse Prabhupada quoted was 4:9, but it could be. It's penned in the manuscript, Tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sorjana. But yes, that works. Not the whole verse, actually. That's another feature that sometimes comes in the editing. The Prabhupada would quote a quarter of a verse or a half a verse, and the editors would add the whole verse, which sometimes wasn't entirely relevant. You'll see that sometimes for Sarvasya Chaham Hridi Sannivishto Matasmrit again. Prabhupada would quote one of the 4 lines, and then the editor would sort of routinely add the other 3, but the other 3 might not have been immediately relevant to the context. Sometimes that happens. Anyway, according to the manuscript, what we see here is just Chatvadeha Punarjanma Naiti Mameti Sorjana. Ultimately, it's not an issue of great consequence because we get the essential knowledge intended. But anyway, these are the things that editors know.
I have a question about that, Raj.
Yep.
Is it, as an editor, would it be more common to do that with an Anushtup verse? Because I do notice Srila Prabhupada quotes, for example, quite frequently Dhyana Vastata Tadkatena, and they only quote that line. Where if you know, to quote the whole Yam Brahma Varunendra, you know, that's quite the verse to include. So is it something that's picked and chosen based upon the length of the verse?
I think more commonly Bhagavad Gita verses where Prabhupada would quote them,
Oh.
because the editors would have access to them,
Oh.
the English editors. The Yam Brahma Rudra, that Pradumna would have access to, but the English editors wouldn't have known the verse. So typically the editors would supply the Bhagavad Gita verses because they'd have access to the English.
That makes sense.
This is the stuff that will be studied by textual scholars in the future. They'll be very intent on studying every aspect of the way Srila Prabhupada's books appear. What commentaries is he relying on? What have the editors done? How is the text understood by Prabhupada's devotees? So many different topics they'll take interest in. In any case, but the main thing is that the devotee cultivates full Krishna consciousness. He's not so foolish as to think that that just by pursuing happiness and avoiding distress, he'll be happy. That's looking back at the word for word meanings, or looking back at the verse. Shreya, Tvam, Gatamat, Rajan. What ultimate benefit are you going to get? This is a discussion in Kathopanishad where Yamaraj, who's speaking, makes the distinction between Shreyas and Preyas, the topic that Srila Prabhupada discusses also elsewhere. But Shreya means ultimate benefit, and Preya means what's immediately pleasing, some temporary benefit. So Narada asks, what ultimate benefit are you going to get out of this, doing these sacrifices? Shreya, Shreyas Tvam Katamat Raja, Karmana, Atmana, Ihase. What ultimate gain do you desire from performing these fruitive activities? Dukkha hani sukhavapti. By seeking dukkha hani, or freedom from distress, and sukhavapti, achievement of happiness, what will you get? You won't even get happiness because you'll have to undergo distress to get it. This point, I think, I repeated the other day that I'd heard from Hari Parshad Prabhu, that happiness and distress are both distress because they're melded together. We're happy when happiness comes, and when it leaves, we're in distress. And we're happy when distress leaves, and unhappy when it comes. So this dukkha hani, dukkhavapti is not worth it. Na cheshite. We don't get long-term benefit just by avoiding distress and seeking happiness. We can go to the higher planetary systems and do that. We can do that here. But if that's all we do, we're wasting our life. Let me get the maximum happiness. You'll get as much happiness as destiny chooses to award, or as much as we deserve according to our previous activities. Or even if we somehow think, yes, I can get more happiness by pious activities, those activities, those pious credits will run out, and I won't have gained a permanent situation. And even the happiness that I get will be mixed with distress. And happiness mixed with distress means distress. But that example is there of kheer mixed with sand. Did I quote that the other night? Maybe. Sweet rice mixed with sand, a little sand, and it's finished. You could say, no, take the good with the bad, or appreciate the good. But who can do that? It's all right, it's very good. There's rice, there's milk, there's sugar, there's maybe some cardamom and other good ingredients, but a little sand and the whole thing is spoiled. The whole thing is spoiled. So the whole project of material enjoyment is spoiled by birth, by death, by old age, by disease. You see that in Ecclesiastes, that Kohelet, the speaker, is advocating enjoyment, but then he sees that what is this enjoyment? It will be finished. And sometimes we can't even get it. By divine arrangement, enjoyment is simply not to be had. But even if we have it, finally, of what consequence is it? What happiness does it ultimately award? So even though he commends happiness and at one point really advocates going for it, he knows that it doesn't work. And that's what Prabhupada highlights here, the great project for material happiness, whether through scientific advancement or through performance of yajnas or by any other means, by trying to perform pious activities and avoid impious activities. None of these methods will bring about ultimate happiness or shreya. That we'll get by going back to Godhead, resuming our eternal nature. All right, we're at 5 minutes from our end. So, Kirtan again. And I'm not in gallery view. Who's here?
Gurmaj, can
Yes.
your people lead there?
Do it again?
Let's do it again.
Okay, we'll do it again. I'd put the video on our Kirtan party, but my laptop is awkwardly situated, so.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Hare
Jai Om Vishnupad Purnamanasa Parivraj Kacharya Stotra Sri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Miraj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Nama Acharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Shamana Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Thank you all very much. And we'll continue tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol.
His Holiness Jayādvaita